Hi everyone, and welcome to the Sagittarius March 2022 Illumination reading. This is I Am Illuminated Tarot, a place for you to better connect with and illuminate your own personal spiritual importance. So hi everyone, welcome to those who are both returning and brand new to this channel. These readings are meant to help you find the meaning in the challenge or challenges you are currently experiencing, so that you can better answer the why. Why am I going through this challenge? What is it meant to help me better see about my individual path and purpose? And what is it going to unlock about myself that is going to be of service to the greater collective experience? So Sagittarius, we are going to jump right in here. So first I'm going to pull a few cards, or a card, depending what comes out, to take a look at the internal energy you're sitting with as we enter the month of March. Then we'll pull some cards to take a look at your external energy, what's going on around you, and then the why. Why are you being asked to bring this internal energy into engagement with your external energy? And we'll look at some blocks that might be coming out. Ooh, that's way too many cards. Sorry guys, I try to take at least 4 cards or less, and that was at least 7 or 8. I like to not dilute the message that much. Okay, let's see here. What is Sagittarius sitting with as far as internal energy for the month of March? Oh, beautiful energy, the sun, illumination. Okay, now let's see what's going on in your external energy here. I'm going to take that. That definitely was coming out. Okay. Oh, the chariot. Interesting. We have a little bit of a Leo Cancer engagement going on right here, which is really interesting. And then at the very bottom, the why. All right, the 10 of Swords. Okay, so let me kind of walk through this here real fast before we start to pull additional cards to look at the blocks. So the sun. Sagittarius, you're entering this month with internal illumination. The sun is a beautiful card in the tarot. It is one that speaks to being able to see more clearly some aspect of your life. It can also signify kind of what you see here. And I know these cards are very small, but it's a return to a childlike innocence of really being able to get almost back to your unique original self, which some might say is your inner child, or it's just the best and brightest part of yourself that truly feels free. And there's something to be said that when this energy comes up internally, that it is almost like somebody has turned the light on inside of yourself. And it can be a little jarring. It can be, as much as it's a beautiful card and the energy is beautiful as well. And of course, we all want to see things clearly and better feel connected to our essence, to this part of ourselves. There can also be a little bit of that feeling of, oh my gosh, it's kind of like, actually another sign got this as their internal energy, I think last month. And there's this feeling of, for any of you who have gone to, let's say, a bar at night, or have gone someplace where you were sitting in the dark for quite some time and then the lights come up, it's almost like you see things that even though you walked into the place possibly with the lights on, that once the lights were turned off and the lights come back on, you start to see things that you had missed originally. So this is where you might see things that are both good and bad. You might see the dirty floor and the trash that wasn't taken out in the corner, but you also might see the beautiful crystal chandelier that's right above your head that you weren't actually able to see when the lights were turned off. And so there's this kind of, it's almost like a double-edged sword when it first happens, when you first have this kind of like moment of illumination, because you're seeing all of the good with all of the bad, all of the parts of yourself that you have perhaps neglected, but also being able to see all of the parts that you may have neglected that are beautiful and that should be brought out and shined up. And I think that's really what you're sitting with now, is seeing those best and brightest parts of yourself and realizing, whoa, I maybe haven't been working with with these parts of myself as much as I should have been. Because in your external environment, we have the chariot. And the chariot is a card. So the sun harnesses the energy of Leo, and which Leo is ruled by the sun. It is also a heart-centered astrological sign. So there's something about, again, kind of getting back to the heart of yourself. And the chariot is ruled by the sign of Cancer. And so there's this element of kind of homecoming with the chariot that I always feel, or that we are getting into the chariot, aligning our head and heart, and we are moving towards what would feel ultimately like home for us. But for some of you, this actually may denote that there is a Cancer, an important Cancer sign in your external environment. But also, what this can mean is that things are lining up in your external environment, that there are things that are kind of starting to click into place to allow you to have forward movement. And it's not just, so if this was, let's say, the Eight of Wands, or maybe the World card, or the Wheel of Fortune, that can also denote movement. I would say that maybe this is about you having to kind of come out and, you know, make some choices and move forward. But with the chariot coming up, this is more about, when we're thinking about the sun card kind of lining up with Leo and being very heart-centered, there's this feeling coming through with the chariot specifically, that there's some aspect of yourself, your heart-centered self, that has perhaps been out of alignment with your head, with kind of your thoughts. You might have been maybe over-rationalizing something or worrying about something. And what I'm really seeing here with the chariot in your external environment is that it's waiting. It's almost like the horses are kind of, you know, hoofing the ground or pawing the ground, and the chariot is sitting there. And all you have to do is bring your heart. You know, we have the black and the white sphinx here denoting, again, a head and a heart alignment. And there's this element here of, it's just waiting for you to bring your heart, to hook up this part of yourself to the chariot and then move forward. So there's a little bit of this kind of heart-centeredness coming through. And what is the ultimate reason as to why Spirit's asking you to kind of get back in touch with this best part of yourself? And why are things aligning in your external environment to start to move forward? Because you are releasing. You are releasing a tie to a point where you felt you were at the lowest place in your life. This can feel, so the Ten of Swords is one where we feel, I mean, if you kind of look at it here, it's basically overkill. It's where you literally were at a place in your life where you could not go any lower, or you felt that you could not at that time, and have had to then kind of move your way up from there. And I think this is the message that you're trying to be shown here, is just how far you come from this point. And that we still can feel the pain of the 10 wands in our back, the 10 swords. Even though this could have been quite some time ago, there's that feeling of deep wounding, of I was stabbed in the back 10 times. I was at such a low point. And we can carry that forward, even though this denotes the closing of a cycle. So the 10 of Swords is the closing of the sword cycle before you go into the court cards. And so this denotes a release, that as you walk forward from this and you pick yourself up and you start to move forward, the lessons that you learned in completing this cycle, you walk forward with one new sword, and you start the 10 sword cycle again with the Ace of Swords, which is a new truth. And that's the beauty of having to go through this cycle, is that you learn something very integral to who you are. And so there's something here about where perhaps what you've gone through in the past, the truth that you discovered about yourself here, is already kind of hitched and waiting out here to the chariot. The sun, your heart, this is what's being illuminated for you this month. What is it? What have you been preventing yourself from getting into alignment with this truth that you discovered here? Now this could be, let me see if I can come up with a good example here. This could be where maybe at your lowest point. Let's say you went through a really difficult relationship, maybe a relationship that was long-term, it was a struggle, it ended in divorce, and maybe it was something where you had to literally kind of rebuild who you were. Maybe you had to move to a different location, you had to leave a job, you had to leave a home, something along those lines, and you literally had to move up from that point. Now, maybe the truth that you realized that you came away with was how strong you were, and that maybe perhaps there was some aspect of yourself in that relationship that was unhealthy. Maybe it was an abusive relationship. Maybe it was you staying in a relationship because you were underestimating yourself. Maybe it was the fact that you rushed in too quickly to a relationship and then tried to make it work. There's all kinds of things that we can learn about ourselves to say, I realized that in going through this, I maybe had committed too quickly, or I had allowed myself to stay in an unhealthy relationship that was codependent, and so I'm going to reevaluate my codependent issues. Or the truth that I'm going to discover about myself is just how strong I am and how I was able to come through that, and how I can now see that it doesn't matter if I have a home here, or if I lose money, or if I have to change a job. I'm able to navigate all of that together. And I apologize, guys, you're going to hear in the background some noise. I am doing laundry in the room next to it, and it's on the spin cycle, so I apologize. So let's say that's something that you had gone through. Now, maybe perhaps at this point, maybe you're now at a place where you are possibly maybe entering into a new relationship, or the potential of a new relationship, and yet you are not, even though you know the truth of who you were in the previous relationship and who you are now, and you have this beautiful truth that you're taking away with you of either how strong you are, or how maybe codependent you had once been, but how you are now aware not to be that way, and you've mended that there's something here where you are holding back committing your heart to maybe this new relationship, to say, okay, I can bring my heart, my vulnerable heart, to this and line it up with the truth that I know about myself, and I'm going to get into the chariot and start driving towards this new relationship. Or it could be something like getting into the chariot and driving towards the job you've been working towards for so long, or you could name it, whatever would ultimately feel like home for you at this time. So there's something about you kind of holding yourself back, and perhaps you've been holding your heart back because, again, of the pain of what you went through, and it's hard. It's hard for us to put ourselves out there vulnerably again, but it's also hard for us to really lead from the heart, to put us out there when we maybe haven't up to this point really appreciated who we are, what that us is, what is linked to our heart. When you think of kind of reconnecting with your inner child, there's this element of, when we think about what did we love as a child, how did we love as a child, who loved us in return, and it's kind of like blending all those things together and bringing that out and allowing that to connect. So let's go ahead now and pull some cards here to see what are the blocks going on between why are you hesitating and fully committing to something that is ultimately going to bring you to a destination that is going to feel like home for you. So we have the Knight of Swords. Now the Knight of Swords can be kind of a brash energy. The Knight of Swords is in your challenge position, which means that it could be one of two things. And actually, let me go ahead. I'm going to get the final two cards here before I... You got some very excited cards. Okay, so I'm going to say what these are, and then I'll jump into the descriptions here. So we have the Knight of Swords, we have the Hanged Man, the Nine of Cups, and the Four of Swords, and the Two of Wands. Okay. All right. So, Knight of Swords. Okay. I get here that there might have been some type of kind of brash communication. So the Knight of Swords is a card that kind of speaks to that. The Knight of Swords is somebody who would kind of come in and truth bomb everybody and then gallop away. This is the person who might enter a conversation and say, well, da 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 da, this is my opinion and that's my truth. And then they just peace out instead of joining the conversation to hear what somebody else might have to say. There's a kind of a brash in and out quality with the Knight of Swords. But what I'm seeing here is that perhaps maybe there was a truth that you came away with from this lowest point as you were moving up and away from this. That you might, when I look at this as a block, this can be where we are maybe not thoughtlessly communicating, but we might be kind of doing that. It's almost like where you can communicate or speak or possibly enter a situation kind of brandishing your sword, and that can injure people. There's a feeling of maybe speaking, it's almost like sometimes when we have gone through something and somebody says, oh yeah, well, anybody who's ever, gone through a divorce, well, that's just, they're stupid. They should have never gotten married to begin with. And then maybe that triggers something within you and you'd sit there and all of a sudden say, well, everybody should have, you don't even know what you're talking about because you've never felt the pain of getting a divorce and falling in love, and you probably don't even know how to love. And then you'd storm out of the room. So it's kind of that's the kind of energy here. So I get a little bit that perhaps there might have been a sharing of your truth that might have come across either defensive, or it might have come in a way that may have been protecting your heart, that you might have been speaking in this way and communicating and acting in this way, but that it was ultimately to protect yourself and not to allow yourself to kind of move forward. And I think maybe it also didn't allow you to really understand, to really accept, let me take it back for a second. When we communicate on this level, and I don't know why communication is coming through strongly, but it really is for me, for you guys. So I'm just kind of reading that intuitively here. There's something around communication. Now, it could be that somebody else in your environment was speaking in this way to you, and it was preventing you, you were kind of getting afraid to kind of put your toe in, because every time you did, they would kind of speak aggressively. But there's something here that if this is for you, that sometimes when we try to speak about how far we've come or the experience we've gone through, there can be this kind of frustrating point when we try to get across how deeply wounded we were, and people don't seem to be responding to that, whether that's a significant other we're in, whether that's a work relationship, or whether that's just a friend we're speaking to, that you feel like they don't understand what you're saying. They don't understand the pain. And a lot of times that's because we're not communicating it in an effective way. We're still communicating from a place of pain instead of communicating how that pain in the moment hurt us, but how far we've come from that point, which is a much easier way to show people the depth of what you've gone through. Because then I have the Hanged Man here, which the Hanged Man is a card actually that denotes Pisces. It's a card of seeing what is currently from a different perspective. So this is kind of a divine pause of being able to, I'm thinking of the Knight of Swords. He's a knight. He's all about movement, and he's about galloping forward. And so there's this quality here of like, okay, I'm going to hitch this horse to the chariot and I want to go. And yet every time he tries to go, the chariot's not moving. The chariot's not moving. It's not going forward. And it's like, well, what the heck? Well, it's because there's one horse missing. It's the heart. And the Hanged Man is that divine pause. That's when something kind of comes in to prevent us from moving forward in a way that we want, because we have yet to see something that we need to see. We have yet to either learn a lesson, we have yet to see maybe an opportunity or something else that we have been, again, missing before we can start to move forward again. And that's really what I'm seeing here, is that you, I think, were kind of, again, trying to move forward in this kind of brash way, sharing some type of truth, and you weren't going anywhere. Now, this could also be, for instance, like, let's say you're in a relationship now, and let's say in this relationship you guys went through a really tough time. Let's say, you know, maybe you went through a period where somebody lost their job and you had to declare bankruptcy, and maybe you had children and there was a lot of worry and struggle, and yet you've come up from that point. But now you're at a place where you guys can really maybe truly move forward a lot faster and quicker together. But every time you guys start to kind of get in alignment, and there's this point where you can maybe start to take some of the savings you guys have accumulated now and maybe put it towards something that's going to maybe elevate your experience, you come in and say, well, you know, remember last time when we had nothing? We shouldn't go ahead and do that. We shouldn't just spend like that. Because remember when we had to declare bankruptcy? And it's like, well, yeah, that's a truth that you guys have lived by currently, or maybe you were saving, maybe you learned that lesson and now you can save adequately, and you have been very wise with your money, or maybe perhaps you were not wise with your money. But when you communicate it like that, you're preventing yourself from actually sharing, basically committing with your partner to moving forward together. So there's a little bit of something like that going on here, where maybe perhaps you were constant, you know, not constant, but where every time you kind of had this point to take the next step. Now, this next step, if it's not in a relationship, this could be in a work environment. This could be where every time you had the opportunity to maybe be promoted, you would sit there and say, well, yeah, but like, if I get promoted, am I going to be totally used like the last guy that I watched get promoted? And am I going to be totally used like when I tried to transfer to that department? And the manager's like, well, maybe you're not quite ready for this role yet. There's a little bit of that coming through, where there's this element of kind of this defensive speaking of a truth that you know is true, and that actually that learning of that lesson is going to be integral to how well you move forward into the, you know, down this path. But now you need to see that in a different light. Now it's time to see it in a way that, okay, I do have this truth. So let's say it is with a job, and maybe, yes, you have, maybe you really want to move up to the next level. Now this could be where you either, let's say, move to I'm trying to just think here. Like, let's say you're trying to move up into a management level, or possibly you might even be a manager, and this might be that point where maybe now you're actually thinking about, could I actually own my own business? Could I become the CEO? I've mastered what I'm doing. But this would be where then you kind of come in with the truth bomb, and you might even be doing this just to yourself, where you're like, well, remember what happened with your friend Tom, who also had a business. Remember, he left too early, and when he started his business, it tanked after a year, and he had no money, and he had to declare bankruptcy, and he had, you know, it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's the truth. It is the truth. And, you know, maybe you had to watch him go through that. Maybe you struggled with your own financial issues, and now you're just scared. Now you're sitting here kind of like, ugh, like I can't do it. But you know that that's the next step. You know that the next, you're feeling pushed to grow in some aspect, whether it's to go into a, you know, elevate in your work environment, whether this is to elevate in a relationship, whether this is to expand just some aspect of your life. And yet you keep, I think, telling yourself, now this could be just literally saying it in your head, or this could be saying it to others around you, that you're telling the truth of what happened in the past and you're applying it to now, but you're saying it in a way that's preventing you from committing to this growth. And what Spirit's asking you to embrace now to get beyond this, to connect your heart to the chariot, is the Nine of Cups. The Nine of Cups is a card that it actually holds with it a wish fulfillment. There's an element here of making a wish, but there also is a feeling of really taking a look at your life and being grateful on a deep emotional level for how much you have in this moment. So much so that if you could make just one wish from here to achieve your ultimate heart's desire, what would that be? And that's really what Spirit's asking you to lean into, to get beyond kind of this defensive energy here, this kind of, I think, negative truth bombing yourself, is to say, what do you really want? You have a lot, which is interesting. That's really coming through strongly here, Sagittarius. You have a lot to be very grateful for and to actually be emotionally fulfilled by. But there's like that one thing more that if you really allowed your heart to connect with it, that's the hitching post. That's you putting on the bridle and grabbing the reins and allowing the truth that you've been so kind of held back by to align with your heart. It's like, yeah, maybe at one point, maybe you and somebody else had gone into business together and it didn't work out and it was a kind of scary, chaotic experience. But the truth is, you've come back from that. And the truth, additionally, is that you have the ability to start a business. And you also have a deep, maybe, need to do so. And yes, it might have failed with a partner in the past, but maybe now, if you fully commit to this dream of owning your own business, that you have the ability to say, well, I'm going to see this in a new light, and to say, well, maybe I shouldn't have gone in with a partner. Maybe it was the partnership that didn't quite work out. It wasn't just me. And maybe now I'm going to try to go in it again myself, going to see this whole element from a different perspective. It's almost like kind of changing your words. Instead of saying, let's say, if this was maybe going from one relationship to another, instead of saying, well, I'm never going to get married again because I don't want to ever have to go through that divorce. It's more than saying, it's almost like turning that around and saying, I will only be married again when my heart knows it's the right person. And that's the difference in how we can take kind of this negative truth bombing of ourselves and change it to a way that's very empowering, and that it ultimately allows us to bring our heart into every time we engage with somebody. We are kind of putting our heart on our sleeve and saying, is this the one? Not, well, even if I do love this person, I'm not going to ever marry them. So you can see it's just a slightly different way of viewing and still using your truth to understand that, yes, I'm not going to just maybe rush into a marriage the way that I did last time, but I know that in my heart of hearts, I still want to be married. That's why I tried it the first time. Or in my heart of hearts, I still want to be a business owner. That's why I tried the first time. Because directly after that, we have the Four of Swords and the Two of Wands. And the Four of Swords is one of rest, rejuvenation, but it's also it's a card that denotes reflection. It's a card that shows a knight, and he is reflecting on all of kind of the wounds of the past, so to speak. And he is allowing himself to take the stories and the wounds that are kind of from others, and he leaves them behind and walks forward again with his sword of truth. And so there's this element here of almost refining your truth, of kind of going through the sieve of spirit, of this divine pause, to come forward with a more clarified version of your truth that now has kind of been cleansed by the water of your emotions. And you are able now to meet your final challenge here, which is the Two of Wands. And this is a card of, where do I go from here? It's making the choice to take action to start down your path again. You know, it's interesting that the Two of Wands has been coming up quite a bit in the readings this month. I think there's a lot of people. It is almost like this is the month to kind of get the reins and start moving ahead. But it does denote a choice, and a choice that requires action to be taken. And I think for you, Sagittarius, there is this beautiful process going on through the month of March where you are going to be really refining the truth to yourself, how you speak it to both yourself and others, and allowing that, again, to be kind of cleansed through this deep emotional tie to gratitude for what you have, how far you've come, but also with the wish of the final cup. And that final cup is actually your heart. It is the cup of eternal love between you and the divine. And that's what's going to allow you to finally make that decision, to bring your heart into alignment with this truth and start to move forward, to allow yourself to be vulnerable. But what's interesting is that, the chariot is the chariot driver. This is you. And when you think about it, yes, it is always vulnerable when we bring our heart into the equation. And when you think about this kind of naked, innocent child, there's this quality that comes through of just bringing the most innocent part of yourself out to possibly be hurt again, but yet it's being placed in a position of strength, of this beautiful horse, these two things together are going to be able to literally to pull you forward. They're powerful steeds, and I think it's so interesting how I didn't even really notice it here, but here is your chariot right here, your two steeds. And again, it's coming from a place of empowerment. And I think you're really going to realize that this month, Sagittarius, that our power comes from our ability to deeply connect on an emotional level to ourselves, but to allow our hearts through love to be engaged with our external environment. We can't allow that part of ourselves to be denied. It's like trying to deny a sweet, adorable child who just wants to go out and play. It's like telling them, no, you can't go out and play because you might get hurt. Because the truth is, people can be mean. And the truth is, you might fall down and scrape yourself. And the truth is, the world's a dangerous place. And it's like, no. Do you think that kid's going to look at you and say, oh, okay? No, the kid's going to look at you and say, I still want to go outside and play. And that's kind of what I feel for you, Sagittarius, is there's this element of like, let yourself go out and play. Let yourself go out and take a risk. Let yourself get back in the driver's seat again and stop letting the pain of the past prevent you from moving forward. All right. So, Sagittarius, I'm going to pull 3 cards now for the concepts of curiosity, courage, and contemplation. And this is where I'm going to engage the Triad of Engagement, which is a coaching tool I utilize in my practice to bring what is a very general message here into more of an individualized message for you. So for curiosity, this is where Spirit would like you to stay curious and open. But there's some aspect here of as you go through the month to kind of ask yourself a question around this theme that's going to unlock awareness to something that's going to help you overcome this challenge. So we have the garden and the gate, number 30, breaking down to a 3, which is always a number of divinity for me. It's also the number of kind of living life with the innocence of a child. And the garden and the gate is exactly kind of what we're talking about here. There's this feeling of this girl who is in a beautiful garden. She holds around her neck a key to the gate that is currently locked. Now, what lies beyond it is the unknown. And she's waiting to make that choice. Do I stay where I've always been, or do I allow my inner child to go out and once again meet the world of the unknown? The big, beautiful world. Now, if you think about it, when we're being curious, I would ask yourself this question, that with the 9 of Cups, there's this feeling of being very grateful for what you have, but yet there's still 1 cup more that is going to lead to your ultimate heart's fulfillment. So there's something here about, she may have been in this beautiful garden, but there's something that's causing her to look out there. There's something for her, there's something that's still wanting, even in the most beautiful of environments. And so, Sagittarius, be curious right now as to where you're holding yourself back, kind of in a security zone here, safety zone of where are you holding yourself back from just unlocking that gate and moving forward because you are too afraid to really feel into that part of yourself that connects directly to the most innocent part of yourself, that directly connects to the dream. I've always wanted this. I've always seen myself as a CEO. I've always seen myself as married and in a beautiful relationship. I've always seen myself living abroad, whatever it is. But be curious about where you have been holding yourself back. And what have you been holding yourself back from fully admitting to yourself is that deep heart's dream. Okay, so now I'm going to pull a card here for the concept of courage. And this is where Spirit would like you to have the courage to take action for the month of March. So what does Sagittarius need to know about where to take action? Ooh, I love this. I think Taurus got this as well too. So it says, surrender comparisons with other people. It says, keep your eyes trained on yourself. Focus on your own strengths, attractiveness, and power. Beautiful. So there is a feeling here of really, when we think about getting our head and heart in alignment and making that choice to move forward and really driving that chariot, steering that chariot towards a destination that emotionally would feel like home, we sometimes will prevent ourselves from doing that because we are comparing ourselves to other people. We are comparing that, and you know, it's interesting, I just heard very clearly, you're comparing this to your past self. Now, this isn't even just comparing yourself to other people, you are comparing yourself to who you were then. Very interesting, very empowering message if you guys can hear this. There are so many times, and I know because I've actually gone through this myself, where I've had to kind of face these moments of, yes, but I was too afraid to do this in the past. Or yes, when I tried to do X, Y, and Z, I failed because I was not a great public speaker and I wasn't able to be disciplined to work on my own, let's say, and I wasn't able, X, Y, and Z. And what you don't realize is that who you were then compared to who you are, those are two different people. The one thing that connects who you were then and who you are now is your original self, is that part of yourself that holds within them the dream, the hope, the deep-seated desire, the one thing you always saw yourself achieving, or the one thing you always wanted to feel or experience. That is your essence. And the amount of experience you have on top of that doesn't change that aspect of yourself. And so there's this feeling coming through of really that as you're maybe hesitating to take action this month and you're a little scared and you're like, yeah, but the last time I tried to do that, it didn't work. That it's reminding yourself, I was a very different person then. I have gained so much more knowledge. I have grown so much more. I am in a different environment than I was back then. And now the one thing that hasn't changed is what I ultimately want to move towards. So why am I denying myself that 10th cup? Okay. So Spirit's saying, don't compare yourself to anybody else and don't compare yourself to your past versions of yourself. Get back to the true essence and just come from that place. Okay. All right, now we're going to pull a final card, final two cards here for the concept of contemplation. And this is what Spirit would like you to reflect on for the month of March. It's kind of like the underlying theme. So we have Council of Light. It says divine orchestration, helpers in the subtle realms, and Mintakan, longing for home, belonging, the original light workers. Very interesting. I think it's really cool that it says longing for home and belonging. There's something about, again, moving towards what will ultimately feel like home. And maybe you have felt a bit like this. When we're thinking about what to reflect on, where do you currently not feel like you are in a place that emotionally fulfills you and feels like home? Are you still constantly looking someplace else, wishing you were there, wishing you had that, wishing you were doing that? So keep that in mind as you move through the month of March. What is it? What is the last cup? What is the wish to get you to a place that would feel like home? And I love with that, we have the Council of Light, divine orchestration helpers in the subtle realms. There's this feeling here that you are not alone, that, again, kind of like what I was saying to start, there's a feeling of things coming into an alignment, allowing this last piece of the puzzle to kind of come through so that you are able to make this choice and move forward. And there's this, kind of feeling here of, maybe some of you do have helpers in a spiritual realm. You may have, family members that have passed on, or you may connect with spirit guides or angels. But however you choose to see and experience kind of the unknown around you, there is a feeling here of support, that at this time for you, there's kind of an energetic level of waiting, of like, okay, here we go. You just have to bring your head and your heart and get ready to go. There's a poignancy that's coming through for me, Sagittarius, for you. And I hope that this is an empowering message, because it really is one of movement, and it's one of clarifying a truth that I think has come from such a deep place of wounding. And there's such this beautiful feeling that this month you might get a wish fulfillment. There is something around that here, but you have to be the one to see it. You have to be the one to want to kind of take action, leave a safety zone, to go out there, to have faith to find it. And I hope that's coming through here. But I do feel there's kind of a lot of pain with this as well. So I really feel for you. I'm sending you lots of love as you gather the courage to really step up into your own, I love that it says your own strength, your attractiveness, and your own power. And you get ready to take the reins of your life again and move towards what is actually not that far out of your reach right now. All right, Sagittarius, I hope you all have a lovely month of March. If you would like to illuminate your own personal spiritual importance and to see how it can be of service to yourself and others, you can click on the link in the description box below to book a reading or a one-on-one coaching session. And I have gotten a couple questions about just the difference between my pre-recorded readings. And for anyone who really wants to kind of answer that, I think, larger question of what is my purpose, kind of why am I here as an individual, my I Am Illuminated reading, that is my kind of expanded reading that really goes into taking a look at your numerology, even some of your astrology, and then tying that through together to give you a big picture of kind of your what, why, when, how, and what you're really meant to, as an individual, bring into our collective experience. It's definitely a reading that is meant to allow you to kind of walk away with real knowledge about yourself as an individual, not as kind of these general readings here. It does include a tarot reading as well to look at a specific block for you, but the majority of that reading is really illuminating you, who you are as an individual, and kind of your motivations and what you ultimately are here to do and fulfill. So I thought I'd just put that out here in this reading. But otherwise, I hope all of you have a wonderful month of March, and I will see you all again in April. Bye, Sagittarius.